I'm the Vice President of Policy for Colorado Succeeds, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition of business leaders who are dedicated to improving the state's education system. I'm here on behalf of our board of directors today to speak specifically to Senate Bill 257. I was also asked to express opposition to that bill on behalf of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. I want to start by saying that I agree with many of the folks that are here to testify today that there is too much testing. I had the pleasure of serving on the House Bill 1202 task force, where I spent many hours reading public comments and listening to parents, teachers, and community members about concerns related to testing. I genuinely appreciate and share the sponsors' desire to reduce testing here in Colorado, and I applaud their efforts. Although the members of the task force represented a wide range of viewpoints, we worked hard to come to nearly unanimous recommendations. As a participant in that process, our organization feels compelled to continue to support those groups' recommendations here. But we also support those recommendations because they represent a fair, comprehensive set of solutions to reduce testing. That's why our members were discouraged to see that Senate Bill 257 goes well beyond those recommendations in several key ways, which combined would fundamentally cripple nearly every aspect of our state's accountability system. As business leaders, our members know what gets measured is what gets done. And the key to accurate and useful measurement lies in the ability to compare actual performance against desired outcomes. By allowing every district to set its own independent targets for success and use different metrics to measure that success, we eliminate comparable grade-by-grade data, which would handcuff our ability to accurately measure student growth, which is a cornerstone of our state's accountability system. But eliminating comparability would also irreparably damage another important type of accountability, and that's parental choice. By creating the possibility for 178 different testing systems, this bill would rob parents of important information that they rely on every year to make important school choice decisions. The net result would be that competition is no longer a realistic tool the state could use for improvement. Additionally, the bill extends the delay on implementation of Colorado's recent tenure reforms, which should not go into effect until the 2018-2019 school year. Colorado made a bold and wise decision to break the old system of evaluation where 99% of teachers were rated as effective and treated like cogs in a machine. The new evaluation system provides the tools to differentiate teachers and recognize them as the professionals that they are. We strongly oppose the bill's suggested delay and hope the state will move forward with the law that was passed in 2010. As business leaders who employ thousands of citizens across the state, our members have firsthand knowledge of the fact that our current education system is not maximizing the potential of our students. The business community is eager to work together to solve problems in a way that doesn't destroy our ability to measure how education system is serving Colorado's kids. And for that reason, we respectfully ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 257.
Thank you, Mr. Ragland. Kudos to being the only person who's hit that exactly at 3 minutes. Colleagues, comments, or questions? Senator Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ragland, thank you for your testimony. I guess I'm trying to understand, from a business perspective, as a business person in my whole life, I know my tenure here will be probably, very limited compared to my business career. I'm always trying to understand, we used to talk about the WIFM, if you're familiar with that, what's in it for me? And so when we get into this forced mandatory testing, and I've listened to a number of people testify, and we're seeing disconnects, in various districts where we're seeing 40%, 60% opt-outs by parents. It seems very clear to me that parents, and often many of the students, don't see any value or any specific value that relates directly to them. Can you, as a business person, understand that perspective?
Mr. Ragland.
Senator Neville, yes, and I appreciate the comment. I think that we have to make sure that Colorado's test, whichever test it is relevant and supported by Colorado's public. And so I think you're absolutely right to have that as a concern. I will say that there's some changes in the 1202 task force bill or its recommendations that I think would address that, specifically in 12th grade. That was an area where it was clear there was really little value to students. And the same could be said for many of the 11th grade tests, which was one of the main reasons we decided to remove them. So I think your point is well taken. There has to be buy-in. This has to mean something. I think that once we see the test implemented, folks will see that a clear, honest, objective feedback about their students' performance is something they will greatly value.
Senator Noel.
Excuse me for my skepticism, but I don't, I'm not one of those believers that, we need to pass the bill and then we'll figure out why it's valuable. And I think that's where a lot of parents are coming from and what we're hearing. So again, I just, I just want to understand, especially the business perspective. It seems like we've gone to this strong level of regulation of education and possibly an over-regulation of education. And as a businessman, I'm not a huge fan of regulation and definitely not a fan of over-regulation. So I find it unusual that some in the business community, apparently not all, I can tell you it's not all, support this heavy regulation, heavy-handed regulation. And I guess I just want to say it seems to be a disconnect to me.
Mr. Ragland?
Senator Neville, again, I really appreciate your comments there, and I think that many of our members share your perspective. I think that it's important to think about a future system or principles that we're looking for. And we like to imagine a system in Colorado where there's maximum flexibility at the school level for school leaders to determine how to operate their schools, how to make staffing decisions, how to do what's important, and even more importantly maybe than that, for parents to be able to choose among multiple school options. But all of that relies on a two-track accountability system, and the first track being parental choice. If parents don't have the ability to understand different performance between schools, it's very difficult for them to make a choice between schools. And the second track is state accountability, to make sure the state provides the metric for that information to occur. And our state's accountability system is basically that, is a rating system that allows parents to see how things are performing.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may have difficulty turning this into a question, but I'll try to do it eventually. Right off the bat, you put your finger on one of the things that concerns, I'm sure, almost every parent here who's testified, and certainly me and many of those who have spent years in the classroom. What gets measured is what gets done. We know we're not measuring everything that's in the curriculum. So are you saying that issues, that parts of the curriculum that are not part of the standardized test regimen are not important, and they're not, certainly they're not those things that are getting done? That's one of the concerns we have. The narrowing of the curriculum has been forced upon districts because they have to concentrate on making sure their scores reach a certain level or they get dubbed. That's personal.
Mr. Ragland.
No, I mean, I think that what gets measured is what gets done. And I think that's an important lesson that we learned on the 1202 task force as a member. We heard from a lot of social studies teachers and folks who really care about social studies, where social studies would no longer be tested and be relegated to a sort of second-class education, which I don't think anybody wants to see. And the lesson there is that what gets measured is what gets done. I think that the task that we have before us as policymakers and the community at large is to find ways to sensibly reduce that, to make it as light as touch as possible, but ensure that we are measuring student progress.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we don't pass some of this legislation, we're not going to be lightening the load. So I'm a little puzzled as to why you're not supporting 257. You talked about we're eliminating comparability. 257 does not eliminate all testing. 233 does, and I can understand that sentiment, but 257 maintains some testing, and there's an opportunity to use that for comparability across the state. That's not a question, that's just a statement. You talked about the validity, or you really, trying to think until you really were, you used the word competition, how we really need to be promoting competition. And frankly, sir, I have to disagree with you. Education is not about competition. It's about cooperation. It's about collaboration. It's about working together. And rather than competing with your teacher next door or with the child next door, you try to create the best mutual process for everybody in each of the schools that you can, instead of having everybody at each other's throat in a competitive way. I think I would just have to say I disagree with you about the value of competition and the way you used it. And finally, you talked about the need for flexibility, and yet the state mandated tests don't provide any flexibility. You got to take that test or else. You have to report those scores or else. There's no flexibility in that except for the parents who've taken the opportunity to opt their children out.
Well said.
Mr. Ragland, would you care to comment?
Yeah, on the flexibility point, I'd like to elaborate on that just a little bit. You're right that the state tests are a clear, objective piece of feedback that is uniform across the state. That's absolutely true. But the only way that you can really allow schools and districts to do really innovative things and release them and give them the maximum flexibility is if parents, the community members, taxpayers, the state, legislators down here have a way to measure whether that's working. And so I think that those two things actually work really well together. Flexibility and clear check-in about performance.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, and thank you for the amount of time you spent on 1202. I know it was a huge commitment, and really appreciate you being at all of those. I don't think you missed any. I think you were there for all of it, so really do appreciate that. I think you've been maybe been in and out of the room, but you've heard a lot of testimony today. Obviously, the recommendations that came from 1202, I believe, were a good starting point. And I think probably everyone in the room would say, yep, good place to start. But I do believe that what we have heard today from parents, from teachers, from administrators, school board members, community members, wide cross-section, have continued to say, no one's afraid of accountability. No one is afraid of wanting to be tested and make sure that that information is coming across. But it needs to be reasonable, and it needs to be done in a timely manner. And when you are dealing with high school students today, they are not compliant little, I'll sit here and fill out the test. This is a group of individual students across our state that I believe are opinionated, they're educated, they want to go places. And so when I hear from students, and I hear from students, I really make it a point, not that parents don't matter, but it's our kids that are in the classrooms. When I hear them saying, I am really disturbed by the amount of learning time I'm losing, I am really concerned that I'm spending more time preparing for a state assessment versus getting ready for an AP test or an IB test or the ACT, that causes my ears to perk up. Because as a former teacher, I know I'm going to get much better results when a student believes that that test means something to them. And so, I think obviously the recommendation of not testing our seniors was loud and clear, and I applaud you for making that clear. And I think that was in response to what many of our students said. But I think that conversation that took place in 1202. So my question to you is, we want to come out with the best possible solution for Colorado. We want to make sure that parents get good information. And I would venture to guess, if we asked everyone in this room, what do you look for when you choose a school? Testing and test results may be a part of it. There's a lot of other factors. And so I'm hoping that the business community comes to be a partner to figure out the solution to this. Because saying, I don't support 257, if that is ultimately the direction that this body chooses to go with, and then we send it to the House, and the House has a bill coming over, there it is, Representative Wilson, that will probably come to us in the Senate. And it may end up being that we tweak and we work on both of those in some similar fashion. My hope is that the business community will come on board with parts of that. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Mr. Ragland.
Thank you, Senator Todd, and I appreciate you inviting us to the table. We are more than happy to be a part of the negotiation, and maybe I should be really clear. There are parts of 257 that I think are really smart. I think that are smart reductions that we support. So there's many parts of 257 that we do support. I just wanted to come here today to highlight. There's just several pieces, mostly dealing with the accountability system that I highlighted here that we can't support. But we're happy to be at the table. We're happy to be there in good faith, and we appreciate that you're willing to engage.